Stay tuned to watch this former city partner and senior lecturer attempt another MCQ from the SRA's question bank against the clock. I've got to answer it in less than 1 minute 42 seconds, the average time that it takes to answer each question in the MCQs for SQE1. Tell you what, I get nervous each time I do this. Wish me luck. 3, 2, 1, go.
If you wanna be solicitors, why don't you come and visit us at SQETV?
Gosh, it's a long question. A company is the claimant in an action for negligence against a defendant accountancy practice. Claimant defendant, it's accountancy practice. Okay, the claimant seeks damages for allegedly negligent professional advice provided by the defendant to the claimant. So yeah, it's a professional negligence case. Standard disclosure has been ordered. A 2-page letter sent to the claimant's managing director by a financial advisor is included in the claimant's list of documents. Let's write down this note of the letter. So who's it between again? It's a 2-page letter sent to the claimant's managing director by a financial advisor, and it's included in the document. So it's by a financial advisor, and they're independent of both parties to the litigation. Let's make a note of that. The letter was found in the office of the claimant's managing director and is the only copy in the possession of the claimant's solicitor. Okay, so it's their only copy. That might be significant. It's clear that the letter was written with the sole purpose of giving advice about drafting the letter for claim in the present litigation. Right, so it's written in contemplation of litigation or in contemplation of proceedings. That might be significant. Let's make a note of that. On what basis can the claimant claim to withhold the inspection of the letter? A, the letter is no longer in the control of the party disclosing it. No, that's wrong, because it's in the solicitor's possession. That's still fine. B, the letter is subject to legal advice privilege. No, that's not true, because it's not a letter written between the solicitor and the client, so that's wrong as well. C, it would be disproportionate to the issues in the case to permit inspection of the letter. No, that's wrong. The letter is available. No problem there. D, the letter is subject to litigation privilege. Yeah, that's absolutely true. It's written in contemplation of proceedings, so that's fine. And E, the letter was written after the cause of action accrued. Let's just think about that. No, that's wrong. You can still, even though that statement's right, that statement is not relevant to the explanation to withhold. Definitely E is wrong. D is the right answer. How did I do? Stop the clock.
SQETV.
This was a dispute resolution question on the topic of disclosure. The fact pattern was quite full, as you can see, so let's start to break the question down into bite-sized chunks, reading and reviewing the content in a bit more detail. So it starts off with the company is the claimant in an action for negligence against a defendant accountancy practice. Now, in my reading and reviewing, my mini pauses as I go through, I sketch those details on the whiteboard and then go on to the next part of the scenario. The claimant seeks damages for allegedly negligent professional advice provided by the defendant to the claimant. So I make a note of this on the whiteboard as well. Standard disclosure has been ordered, and this prompts me into thinking this might be a question about disclosure, which you'll recall is the stage in civil proceedings when each party must inform the other of the documents that they have which are relevant to the claim, and as a general rule, each party is required to disclose any documents they have or have had under their control that they intend to rely on, or any documents which are prejudicial to their own case. Let's move on to the next part of the scenario. A 2-page letter sent to the claimant's managing director by a financial advisor is included in the claimant's list of documents. So we've been told about this document written by the financial advisor to the claimant's managing director, and as I'm a visual learner, I find it helpful representing this information pictorially on the whiteboard. But that's my learning style, not necessarily yours. We're then told the financial advisor is independent of both parties to the litigation, which I make a note of as well. The scenario continues. The letter was found in the office of the claimant's managing director, and the only copy is in the possession of the claimant's solicitor. Now I pause here to get my head around what's going on here. The letter's no longer in the claimant's possession, but it was originally before being passed to the claimant's solicitor. So I make a mental note here that the letter is still actually under the control of the claimant, which might be relevant to the question, but we'll see later. At the end of the scenario, we're told it's clear that the letter was written with the sole purpose of giving advice about drafting the letter before claim in the present litigation. And I'm thinking this may give the claimant good cause to withhold inspection. So what's the question asking? On which basis can the claimant claim a right to withhold inspection of the letter? And in my mini pauses as I read and review as I go along, I've built up quite a good understanding of the whole of the fact pattern. It's, I think, put me in quite a good place as to answering this question correctly. Now, the question is actually suggesting that the claimant is entitled to withhold the letter from inspection. I've started to think that already. So the key to answering this question correctly is making sure we understand the best reason why the claimant can withhold the letter. So on to the options. And I can immediately see that option A is incorrect. It says the letter is no longer in the control of the party disclosing it. But control for these purposes doesn't just mean physical possession. The fact that the letter is now with the claimant's solicitors doesn't stop it still being within the claimant's control, as the claimant has a right to possession of that letter. For example, they could just ask their solicitors to return it right here, right now. So I must reject option A and then move on to option B. And that says the letter is subject to legal advice privilege. Now, I remember what legal advice privilege is, and it's the status of a confidential communication passing between a lawyer and a client, which is created for the purpose of giving or receiving legal advice. And the critical fact here is that the letter in the MCQ does not pass between the claimant and their lawyers. It's actually passing between the claimant and the financial advisor of the claimant. So that means the letter can't be protected by legal advice privilege because it wasn't passed between the lawyer and their client. So we can reject option B. Option C says it would be disproportionate to the issues in the case to permit inspection of the letter. Now, I remember there's a limited exception to documents being subject to inspection where a party believes it's disproportionate to the issues of the case to permit inspection of a class or category of documents. Now, that argument is usually that the cost of finding the relevant documents and making them available for inspection is disproportionate in the context of the actual case. But here, there is no or little cost in making this document available for inspection. We know where it is after all. So the proportionality argument just isn't a valid reason to withhold it from inspection. So C is clearly incorrect as well. And I'm thinking, well, this is good. I'm only choosing from two answers now. So on to option D. And this says the letter is subject to litigation privilege. And I remind myself what litigation privilege is here. It's a confidential communication passing between a lawyer and their client, or between either of them and a third party, where the main purpose of that communication is in relation to advising or giving information that's to be used in litigation. And we're told earlier that the letter was written with the sole purpose of giving advice about drafting the letter before claim in the present litigation. So clearly, as this letter passed between the client and a third party, the financial advisor, and its main purpose was advice in relation to the litigation, it does look like that this letter has the benefit of litigation privilege. So I'm thinking D is probably the right answer, but I do need to do a thorough check of answer E just in case it's a better one. So option E says the letter was written after the cause of action accrued. Now, whilst that's true in the sense that the letter did postdate the cause of action, does that actually mean that the inspection is only limited to documents created on or before the date of the cause of action? Well, the answer is no, and there are often documents which postdate the cause of action which might be relevant and disclosable and therefore liable to inspection. So I'm happy to reject E and select D as my answer. SQETV. As we always do in these videos, let's now take a look at the what-if scenarios. Remember, these are the slight changes in the fact pattern that could have taken your answer in a completely different direction had the question been worded slightly differently. Remember, what we don't do here is to give you a full analysis on these what-if scenarios. The purpose of them is for you to go away and have a think about the issues more deeply, because remember, an MCQ on disclosure and inspection is not going to be limited just to the narrow areas covered in this MCQ. So what if the letter was not written in contemplation of legal proceedings? What if the original of the letter had been destroyed in a fire and there were no copies? What if the letter contained information that was prejudicial to the claimant's claim? And what if the content of the letter was already in the public domain? What impact would that have on disclosure and inspection? So to conclude this part of the video, in order to answer the SRA's FLK1 sample question 3 correctly, you needed to have a strong grasp of all of the following topics. Firstly, the major topics of disclosure and inspection, and then the subtopics that come up within disclosure and inspection, starting with legal advice privilege and litigation privilege. What's the difference between these two types of legal professional privilege? They are different, but there is an overlap. You need to understand the difference, but also when there's an overlap, particularly in cases where advice is being given by a solicitor to their client. What is control of documents for the purpose of disclosure and inspection was covered by this question, as was proportionality in the context of inspection. But remember, this MCQ only covered a narrow area, or a relatively narrow area, of the very large topics of disclosure and inspection. So go away and make sure you've revised areas that aren't covered by this question, but hopefully this video has given you some guidance on the issues that were covered.
SQETV.
That was FLK1 sample question 3 from the SRA's question bank. Hope you enjoyed our approach to it, and maybe you got the same answer as we did in the same time using a similar approach. Remember, what we do on this channel is to use the R technique. Remember, R stands for read, review and repeat. Remember, it's nothing to do with pirates. No pirates at all. Read, review and repeat. And by that, what we mean is we read and review each bite-sized chunk of the question as we go along and repeat that strategy until we get to the end of the question. And that way we're starting to absorb all the nuances in the question, so that by the time we get to the 5 options, we're in a pretty good place to know what's coming up and how to tackle, what to reject and what to select before resetting and going off to look at the next question. So if you enjoyed this video, please do like and subscribe to the channel, because there are many, many more of these to come. And don't forget to tap the notification bell so you are aware of our videos as soon as they drop. Until next time, cue the jingle.
If you wanna be solicitors, why don't you come and visit us at SQETV?